The sun had just begun its slow climb over the rolling hills of Camp Pendleton, casting long, golden shadows across the firing range. The air smelled faintly of gunpowder and dry earth, a scent familiar to anyone who had spent years in uniform, yet still potent enough to make the uninitiated flinch. Among the lined-up Marines, there was a ripple of whispered conversation, some stifled laughter, and a few smirks that seemed to follow one particular figure. Sergeant Maya Collins walked with deliberate steps, her boots crunching against the gravel, each one measured, each one precise. Her posture was impeccable, her back straight, shoulders relaxed, and head held high. She carried no arrogance, no need for recognition. Yet every eye on the range seemed drawn to her small frame, her quiet demeanor, her seemingly unassuming presence. Some of the younger Marines exchanged knowing glances, rolling their eyes as if silently agreeing, "This one doesn't belong here." They didn't know her. They didn't know the countless hours she had spent perfecting her craft before she ever put on the uniform. They didn't know that behind those calm, unblinking eyes was a mind trained to analyze every shift of wind, every subtle vibration in the ground, every heartbeat of the target before her. To them, she was just another recruit, or, at least, that's what they assumed. "Bet she'll miss," muttered Corporal Jensen to his teammate, a cocky grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. The words were quiet but carried across the line. A few others snickered, nodding in agreement. "I'll put 50 on it. Not one headshot," Jensen added, shaking his head as if the notion were preposterous. Maya heard everything. She wasn't eavesdropping, she didn't need to. Her ears were trained to pick up the softest vibrations, the faintest changes in her surroundings, skills honed not just for combat but for life. And yet she didn't react. She didn't even flinch. She didn't lower her gaze or tighten her grip. Instead, she simply exhaled and continued to prepare her gear with meticulous care, checking her rifle, her ammunition, and her scope as though the conversation didn't exist at all. Her instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Rivera, observed from a distance, arms crossed over his chest. He had seen this before: the doubting, the whispering, the casual bets made against someone who quietly carried a depth of skill no one could yet comprehend. Rivera's face remained impassive, but a small, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at his lips. "They're about to learn a lesson they won't forget," he thought. Maya crouched over her rifle, adjusting the bipod, her fingers steady, confident, and unshaking. Her mind wasn't focused on the bets, the smirks, or the whispers. Her mind was elsewhere, on the rhythm of her breath, on the way the sun reflected off the target, on the subtle shift of wind that could move a bullet a foot off course at 500 yards. Every detail mattered. Every variable had to be accounted for. Failure wasn't an option, not because she feared judgment, but because she owed it to herself, and to the memory of the man who had taught her everything she knew. Her father had been a Vietnam veteran, a man who never wasted words but who spoke volumes in the precision of his actions. From the time she was a child, he had drilled into her the fundamentals of marksmanship: breathe, steady, observe, fire. He had taught her to read the wind, to calculate distance, to account for recoil, and to trust her instincts. Maya's fingers remembered the feel of his old rifle, the weight of responsibility, and the thrill of hitting a distant target with unerring accuracy. She carried those lessons with her like a silent oath, one that she would honor every day of her life. Now here she was, on one of the most important ranges of her career, surrounded by Marines who thought her too small, too quiet, too calm to be a threat. Jensen's bet, the whispered mockery, was almost a challenge, one she intended to meet, silently but decisively. She adjusted her scope, aligning the crosshairs with the first target, noting the slight shimmer of heat rising from the earth, the subtle shift of the morning breeze. Around her, the other Marines were loud and distracted. Some were joking, others were shoving each other lightly, all underestimating the quiet woman among them. Maya could feel their doubt as clearly as if it were a tangible weight in the air, and she welcomed it. The moment called for focus, for discipline, for calm, and those who doubted her had unknowingly set the stage for the performance of a lifetime. She settled into her prone position, feeling the coarse gravel bite through her uniform but ignoring it. She placed the rifle against her shoulder, closing one eye to peer through the scope, aligning herself perfectly with the first target at 500 yards. Each movement was deliberate, measured. She exhaled slowly, letting her heartbeat synchronize with her thoughts. This was not about proving anyone wrong. It was about precision, discipline, and honoring the training that had made her who she was. The range went quiet. Even the mocking whispers faded as the gravity of the moment descended upon the group. All eyes turned toward Maya, some out of curiosity, some out of disbelief. Jensen leaned forward slightly, his grin fading as he watched her adjust the scope, her fingers moving deftly over the rifle. He could feel a shift in the energy of the range, a subtle tension that had not been there before. Something about the way she moved, the way she breathed, commanded attention, even if none of them wanted to admit it. Maya's gaze swept the target one last time. Her mind calculated wind speed, distance, and trajectory. Every lesson her father had taught her, every hour she had spent perfecting her aim, came together in this single moment. She didn't need to speak, didn't need to shout or boast. The silence around her was her arena, and the rifle in her hands was an extension of herself. She tightened her grip slightly, inhaled deeply, and prepared for the shot that would change every doubter's perception. The Marines who had whispered and bet against her had no idea what they were about to witness. And as her finger rested lightly on the trigger, Maya Collins became a force that no one in the camp would forget. Because today, the quiet, underestimated sergeant was about to show them all exactly what it meant to be precise, disciplined, and deadly without ever raising her voice. And the first shot, the one that would silence every doubt, was about to echo across the range. Maya Collins lowered her rifle and took a slow, steadying breath. The weight of her father's teachings pressed gently against her shoulders, invisible yet undeniable. She had grown up in a small rural town in Pennsylvania, a place where the forests stretched wide and the fields rolled endlessly. Her father, Thomas Collins, a stern but patient Vietnam veteran, had taught her that every shot mattered, that discipline was not just about skill, but about life itself. From the age of 9, Maya had been on the firing line, not as a game, but as a lesson in patience and precision. Her father's old M1 carbine and a selection of pistols had been her first instructors, and every lesson carried an underlying principle: focus, observe, adjust, and act. The recoil, the wind, even the subtle tremors of the hand, were all elements of a calculation that demanded respect. By the time she was 12, she could hit targets at distances her classmates barely imagined, often while ignoring distractions that would unsettle any adult. Her mother often shook her head at the intensity of it all, worried that Thomas's rigorous approach would wear her down. But Maya thrived under the discipline. She loved the quiet concentration, the tunnel of focus that enveloped her during a shot. It was in those moments that the chaos of the world disappeared, leaving only calculation, patience, and the thrill of hitting a perfect mark. Her father's lessons had been far more than practical. They were a philosophy, a mindset that became part of her identity. Then tragedy struck. Thomas Collins passed suddenly, leaving a void in Maya's life that no amount of practice could fill. Yet, it was that loss that cemented her decision to enlist in the Marines. If her father had taught her precision, focus, and discipline, it was now her responsibility to wield them with honor. The base, the ranges, and eventually the battlefield became her new classroom. Every exercise, every qualification, every mission was a tribute to the man who had shaped her life. Her past training was not just theoretical. She had faced challenges that tested not only her marksmanship but her ability to think under pressure. From small-town competitions to statewide events, Maya had learned to adapt quickly. She had trained in extreme heat, freezing cold, gusty winds, and unpredictable terrain. Each variable became a part of her instinctual calculation, embedding within her a reflexive understanding of precision. Her father had always emphasized that a shooter's mind must work faster than the body, that instincts without control were worthless. She had taken that lesson to heart. Now, on the Camp Pendleton range, all of that training converged. The Marines who had whispered bets didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness years of preparation compressed into seconds. Maya adjusted the scope of her rifle, taking note of the subtle shimmer of heat rising off the asphalt and the delicate sway of the distant targets. Every detail mattered, every micro-adjustment counted. Her fellow Marines were oblivious to the depth of her skill. Jensen and his team continued their murmurs of disbelief, shaking their heads as if humor could mask their ignorance. "She's just lucky," Jensen said under his breath, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. Another whispered, "Even if she hits one, she won't do it again." They underestimated her because they had never seen true precision born from discipline, from years of dedicated practice. They had never faced someone who had turned focus into instinct. Maya's mind, however, was elsewhere. She pictured her father beside her, teaching her again, silently correcting her stance, adjusting her grip, reminding her that the wind is not the enemy, it's part of the calculation. She could almost hear his voice. "Control your breath, control your thoughts, and the rest will follow." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memory sharpen her senses. When she opened them, her vision seemed to pierce through the distance, reading every flicker of movement, every subtle imperfection of the target. The other Marines continued their low bets and quiet laughter, but Maya's focus never wavered. In fact, she welcomed the doubt. It sharpened her concentration, pushed her to remain calm under scrutiny, and made the eventual demonstration of her skill all the more satisfying. She didn't need validation, but she did need to honor her father's legacy, to prove, if not to them, then to herself, that preparation and precision were forces no casual bet could overcome. Her training had not been limited to simple marksmanship. Maya had spent hours simulating battlefield scenarios, tracking moving targets, calculating distances in unpredictable conditions, and firing from unconventional positions. She had learned to anticipate environmental factors, to predict how each variable could alter the trajectory of a bullet, and to adjust instantly. Each challenge had been a lesson in patience and mental fortitude. Every successful hit had been a step toward perfecting a skill that now lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to manifest. And that moment was now. Maya repositioned herself on the prone line, her rifle settled perfectly against her shoulder. She breathed slowly, deliberately, and adjusted her scope, measuring distance, wind, and angle with the precision of a surgeon. Each breath was a metronome, each heartbeat a reminder of the calculation she had mastered. She could feel the weight of the rifle, the subtle pull of gravity, the imperceptible breeze curling across the range. All of it mattered, all of it was under her control. Around her, Jensen and the others were distracted by their own jokes and bets. They didn't notice how calm she had become, how her eyes scanned every element of the range with unwavering focus. They didn't notice the quiet confidence that emanated from her posture, a confidence born not of arrogance, but of preparation. They didn't see the invisible line connecting her childhood, her father's lessons, her competitive experience, and her disciplined years in the Marines. A line that would soon translate into action that defied expectation. Rivera, the instructor, watched silently from a distance. He had trained many sharpshooters in his career, but there was something about Maya that set her apart. Perhaps it was the way she combined patience with instinct, focus with adaptability. Perhaps it was the unspoken promise that she would not be underestimated. Either way, Rivera knew the bet whispered across the range was about to be shattered. Maya exhaled slowly, her finger resting lightly on the trigger, her vision locked on the first target. She could almost feel the echo of her father's presence beside her, steady and calm, urging her to trust herself. The whispers, the smirks, the doubt, they were irrelevant. In that moment, she was not proving anything to anyone else. She was executing a lifetime of discipline, skill, and preparation in a single, silent demonstration. The stage was set. The Marines had placed their bets. The audience was ready, eyes wide with anticipation and barely disguised skepticism. And Maya Collins, quiet, precise, and unassuming, was ready to show them that skill, when forged through years of dedication, was unstoppable. Because in just moments, the first shot would ring out, and every single doubt, every whispered bet, every underestimated comment would be proven completely wrong. And for Maya, that moment wasn't about winning a bet. It was about honoring a legacy, showing the world that true skill is quiet, unassuming, and impossible to ignore when it finally reveals itself. The early morning sun glinted off the barrels of rifles lined neatly across the firing line. The faint metallic scent mixed with dust and gunpowder hung heavy in the air. Around the range, Marines shifted restlessly, voices low but edged with amusement. Jensen leaned against a crate, smirking at Maya, shaking his head as if mocking the sheer audacity of her presence. "She won't hit the first one," he muttered under his breath to a nearby private who nodded eagerly. "Bet you $20 she misses twice." Others joined in quietly, exchanging wagers, sharing laughs at her expense. Maya's ears absorbed it all, but her face betrayed nothing. She moved like water, calm and fluid, each motion deliberate as she checked her rifle, adjusted her ammunition, and prepared her scope. In the world of the Marines, confidence often spoke louder than skill. Maya didn't need words. Her preparation did all the talking. Gunnery Sergeant Rivera, standing a few meters behind the line, observed the unfolding scene with quiet amusement. He had seen doubt in the eyes of recruits before, but something about Maya was different. The whispers, bets, and smirks would not disturb her. She had already absorbed years of focus and discipline, lessons etched deep into her very being. "You boys are really underestimating her," Rivera said quietly to himself, arms crossed. His eyes flicked from Maya to Jensen. The corporal's smirk had hardened slightly, a subtle tension creeping into his posture. Rivera knew the moment of reckoning was approaching, the kind of moment where doubt either shattered confidence or met an unexpected, undeniable truth. Maya crouched low, positioning herself into the prone stance that had become second nature. She was perfectly aligned with the first target, a small silhouette barely discernible at 500 yards. She could feel the gravel beneath her elbows, the subtle wind brushing against her face, the faint warmth of the rising sun. Each detail mattered. Each variable was critical. The Marines continued their murmured bets and quiet jokes, unaware that with every passing second Maya's focus sharpened. The range seemed to narrow around her, isolating her from the distraction of whispered doubt. Her mind rehearsed the familiar mental sequence: check stance, adjust scope, measure wind, calculate distance, control breath, fire. Each step had been repeated countless times, and yet in this moment it carried the weight of expectation. Jensen noticed the change first. The subtle shift in her demeanor, the way her eyes narrowed slightly, the way she exhaled slowly and deliberately. For a brief instant he sensed a tension he hadn't expected, but pride and ignorance masked his apprehension. "She's just getting lucky," he muttered again. "Watch, she'll miss the next one." Maya ignored him entirely. She didn't need validation from those who doubted her. Their disbelief only sharpened her concentration. The rifle felt like an extension of her body, the scope a lens into her lifetime of training and discipline. Every target, every wind shift, every microsecond of decision-making was clear in her mind. This was not about proving them wrong. It was about proving to herself that years of preparation, dedication, and relentless focus could stand the test of pressure. The wind picked up slightly, brushing across the range with a gentle, irregular rhythm. Many recruits would have panicked, overcompensating or second-guessing their calculations. Maya, however, welcomed it. She adjusted her aim minutely, calculating the trajectory in her head. She could almost feel the bullet's path, each one connecting seamlessly with her mental map. Her father's lessons whispered to her across time, reminding her to trust herself, trust the process, and remain unshakable. A private nearby nudged Jensen, whispering nervously, "She looks different. Calm, too calm." Jensen grunted, unwilling to acknowledge the shift, though the tension in his jaw betrayed him. The atmosphere along the range was charged now, a blend of anticipation, doubt, and unspoken challenge. Every Marine present, whether they knew it or not, was witnessing a storm about to break, one person's precision against a sea of skepticism. Rivera remained silent, allowing the tension to build. He knew that when Maya fired, the moment of truth would be indisputable. The whispered bets would collapse under the weight of her skill. He had trained many sharpshooters, but the combination of her calm, her instinct, and her preparation set her apart. This wasn't luck. This was mastery honed through years of discipline. Maya closed her eyes briefly, inhaling deeply. The gravel beneath her elbows pressed against her uniform, the rifle solid and unwavering. She imagined her father's voice. "Control your breath, your thoughts, your hand. Everything else will follow." That voice, clear in her memory, sharpened her senses. She exhaled slowly, aligning her vision once more with the first target. The murmurs faded as the moment approached. Jensen held his breath unconsciously, suddenly aware that the casual bet might be at risk. The other Marines leaned forward slightly, sensing the tension they had dismissed moments ago. The range was silent, save for the faint whistle of the wind and the distant cawing of a crow. Every eye was on Maya now, though most still refused to believe in the inevitability of her precision. She adjusted the rifle one final time, ensuring perfect alignment. Her finger hovered lightly on the trigger. Every muscle, every thought, every ounce of training came together in a single, deliberate pause. She wasn't aiming for glory. She wasn't aiming to humiliate the skeptics. She was aiming to execute flawlessly, to honor the countless hours of preparation and the memory of her father's guidance. Then, just before the first shot, Jensen whispered almost to himself, "She's gonna miss. There's no way she hits it." His words were quiet, but they carried through the collective expectation of the range. In that brief moment, Maya felt a surge of focus. The doubts, the bets, the mockery, they became irrelevant. All that remained was precision, preparation, and timing. She exhaled slowly, her finger tightened slightly on the trigger, and then a single shot rang out, sharp and precise, echoing across the range. The sound was a punctuation mark, a declaration that the quiet sergeant was anything but ordinary. The first target was hit dead center. Gasps rose from the group of Marines. Jensen's eyes widened, his jaw slackening as he stared in disbelief. Rivera allowed himself the smallest nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement of what he had already known. Maya didn't flinch, didn't celebrate. She simply adjusted her scope for the next target, her focus unbroken. The energy of the range had shifted. The whispered bets, the smirks, and the casual mockery dissolved into stunned silence. Maya Collins had just proved in a single shot that preparation, discipline, and calm focus could defy expectation. The storm had begun. And in the moments that followed, the other Marines would learn a lesson that no casual bet, no whispered doubt, and no underestimation could ever erase. Because the quiet sergeant, underestimated and overlooked, was just getting started. The first shot had echoed across the range like a declaration of inevitability. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The Marines who had whispered and laughed moments ago froze mid-breath, their bets and jokes hanging uselessly in the air. Jensen, pale and slack-jawed, blinked rapidly as if hopping the shot had been a fluke. But Maya Collins remained calm, the serene eye of a storm, unmoved by their disbelief. She had already begun the mental calculation for the next shot. Her hands were steady on the rifle, elbows pressed firmly against the coarse gravel, and her breathing slow and measured. Each detail mattered: the distance, the wind, the faint quiver of the barrel after the first shot, the subtle shifts in light across the target. Every variable was accounted for, every adjustment deliberate. This was not improvisation. It was mastery. Around her, the Marines whispered nervously. Some tried to mask their shock with forced laughter, others stared wide-eyed, unable to speak. Jensen's smirk had vanished entirely. His confidence, so easily displayed before, had crumbled under the undeniable skill of the quiet sergeant. Rivera observed from his post, arms crossed, a small, approving nod hidden behind his stern expression. He had trained many sharpshooters, but even he recognized that Maya possessed something rare: instinct honed by experience and tempered by discipline. Maya closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. She inhaled deeply, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat align with her thoughts. The first shot had been a validation of her preparation, but the challenge was far from over. She knew the doubters were watching closely, ready to seize on any perceived mistake. That was fine. Their expectation of failure sharpened her focus, creating a clarity that few could achieve under pressure. Her father's lessons returned vividly in her mind. "Control your breath, trust your calculation, and the rest will follow," he had said countless times. Those words were now a mantra, guiding her through the subtle shifts of the range. Maya adjusted her scope slightly, noting the faint shimmer of heat waves dancing over the asphalt, the way the wind had changed direction by just a few degrees. To most, these details would be insignificant, but to her, they were everything. The next target was lined up, and Maya's finger hovered lightly on the trigger. She could feel the anticipation around her as the other Marines leaned forward, their quiet whispers replaced by tense silence. The challenge had shifted from casual ridicule to awe-filled expectation, and yet Maya remained unaffected. She had trained for moments like this, where every heartbeat mattered and every microsecond could change the outcome. She exhaled slowly, feeling the rifle settle into perfect alignment. The gravel beneath her elbows pressed against her uniform, grounding her, while her mind visualized the trajectory of the bullet, calculating how it would travel across the distance with exact precision. Maya's entire being focused on a single goal: flawless execution. Then, almost in a fluid motion, she squeezed the trigger. The second shot rang out, precise and unwavering, hitting dead center. A collective gasp rippled through the Marines. Jensen's jaw dropped. He instinctively took a step back, disbelief etched on his face. The murmurs of the group were replaced by stunned silence. Maya did not flinch. She simply prepared for the next target, adjusting her aim as her body remained perfectly still. The third shot followed swiftly, almost seamless, the rifle recoiling gently as the bullet struck true. The Marines exchanged glances, some unable to comprehend the skill they had just witnessed. Rivera's eyes narrowed slightly in concentration, but beneath his disciplined exterior there was unmistakable pride. Maya's focus was absolute, her calm unshakable. Every movement, every calculation, every adjustment was executed with precision that bordered on artistry. By the time the fourth shot was fired, the atmosphere on the range had transformed. What had begun as casual ridicule and amusement had become a palpable tension, a mixture of awe and disbelief. Marines who had joked moments before now watched in silent reverence, unable to tear their eyes from the display. Jensen, the instigator of the bet, was frozen, hands gripping the edge of the crate as if he might disappear if he looked away. Maya's serene focus contrasted sharply with the chaos of emotions swirling around her peers. The fifth shot, fired with the same deliberate precision as the first, landed perfectly in the center. 5 shots, 5 perfect headshots executed in rapid succession, leaving no room for doubt. The digital monitors confirmed the outcome, the data undeniable. Maya had done the impossible. She had exceeded every expectation, shattered every bet, and rendered every whisper of doubt meaningless. For a moment the range was silent. The sound of wind, distant crows, and the settling of dust were the only noises, punctuated by the echo of the shots that had already faded. Then slowly murmurs began, spreading across the line like wildfire. "Did you see that?" one whispered. 5 shots, all dead center," another murmured, disbelief and awe mingling in their tone. Jensen's mouth opened, then closed, as if trying and failing to form words. Rivera finally stepped forward, his face stern but eyes gleaming with quiet approval. "Sergeant Collins," he said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence, "I think that proves the point." He didn't need to elaborate. The demonstration had spoken louder than any instructor's praise could. Maya simply nodded, lowering her rifle and allowing herself a subtle, satisfied exhale. The Marines who had mocked her now approached cautiously, some with reluctant admiration, others still grappling with disbelief. Jensen stepped forward, jaw tight, voice low. I didn't think you could do that," he admitted, finally acknowledging her skill. Maya nodded once, simply. She didn't gloat, she didn't need to. The results were self-evident. Word of the feat spread quickly through the base. By midday, almost every Marine on Camp Pendleton had heard the story, not of arrogance or boastfulness, but of unparalleled skill and calm under pressure. Maya Collins, the quiet, underestimated sergeant, had redefined what it meant to be precise, disciplined, and deadly. For Maya, however, the achievement was not about fame or recognition. It was about honoring the lessons of her past, the training that had shaped her, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing one's preparation is flawless. She had turned the casual bets and whispers of doubt into a moment of undeniable proof that skill, discipline, and focus could transcend expectations and silence skepticism. As the range cleared and the Marines returned to their drills, the memory of those 5 shots lingered. Jensen, Rivera, and the others would recall the image of Maya Collins, calm, precise, and unflinching, a force that could not be underestimated. The lesson was clear. Underestimating a Marine who had trained, prepared, and mastered her craft was a mistake no one would repeat. And in the quiet aftermath, Maya stood alone for a moment, rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon. She wasn't looking for praise, she wasn't looking for validation. She was simply acknowledging the culmination of years of focus, discipline, and dedication. Today, she had proven that preparation and skill could outshine doubt and expectation. The calm before the storm had passed. The storm itself had arrived, and it had a name: Sergeant Maya Collins. The echo of the 5th shot still lingered across the firing range, hanging in the air like a challenge to every whisper of doubt that had preceded it. 5 headshots. 5 impossible, flawless, rapid shots. The Marines who had been laughing, mocking, and betting against her now stood frozen, some slack-jawed, others staring in disbelief. Jensen, who had been the loudest voice in her underestimation, looked as though the ground had shifted beneath him. Did she just do that?" muttered a private, unable to keep the astonishment out of his voice. Around him, murmurs spread like wildfire. The casual bets, the whispered mockery, and the jokes that had floated through the range moments ago seemed almost absurd now. One by one, the Marines who had doubted her began to register the truth. Sergeant Maya Collins had just shattered every expectation, and she had done so with calm, unflinching precision. Maya didn't move immediately. She remained in her prone position for a moment longer, letting the reality settle, letting the silence of awe wash over the range. Her rifle rested steadily beneath her, fingers relaxed but ready, eyes scanning the targets one last time. She wasn't done proving anything. The work was never about proving herself to others. The work was about executing flawlessly, and she had done that. Rivera, standing slightly behind the line, finally allowed himself a small, approving nod. He had trained countless sharpshooters in his career, and he had seen skill, focus, and confidence, but what Maya had displayed went beyond technical ability. It was instinct, discipline, and mental clarity combined into one precise, deadly force. Rivera's gaze shifted to Jensen and the others, whose smug expressions had completely vanished. "That's how it's done," he murmured under his breath. Jensen's mouth opened and closed, attempting words, but none came. He took an involuntary step back, suddenly aware of the gulf between Maya's skill and his assumptions. His smirk, once cocky and arrogant, had disappeared entirely. The betting slips and whispered wagers that had been so casually tossed around were meaningless now, reduced to folly in the shadow of undeniable mastery. Some of the younger Marines whispered to one another, unable to look away from the demonstration. "She's unreal," one said. "I've never seen anyone do that." Others nodded, awestruck, silently recalculating every opinion they had ever held about her. In those few seconds, Maya had transformed from an underestimated sergeant into a living legend, a figure that commanded respect through her actions alone. Finally, Maya rose from her prone position, rifle slung neatly over her shoulder. Her movements were calm, deliberate, and unhurried, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. She didn't turn to gloat, didn't smirk, didn't seek applause. The results of her skill were enough. Every eye was on her now, but she remained grounded, steady, and composed, the quiet eye of a storm that had just passed through their ranks. Rivera stepped forward, breaking the silence. "Sergeant Collins," he said, his voice steady but commanding, "I think that's a lesson everyone needed today. His tone carried no exaggeration. The demonstration had spoken for itself. Maya nodded once in acknowledgement, her expression calm and neutral. She didn't seek validation, and Rivera didn't offer it beyond a respectful nod. The performance itself was all the recognition required. The Marines who had once whispered and laughed at her feet shuffled forward, hesitant, almost reverent. Jensen, still pale and shaken, finally managed to speak. I didn't think you could do that," he admitted, his voice low, tinged with humility. Maya's only response was a simple nod. There was no need for words. Her results had already rewritten their understanding of her skill and her discipline. By midday, word of Maya's feat had spread across the base. The story circulated in hushed tones, sometimes whispered, sometimes repeated with growing astonishment. The quiet sergeant who made 5 headshots in seconds became an instant legend among her peers. It wasn't just the marksmanship. It was the calm, the precision, and the discipline that had accompanied it. Maya had demonstrated that preparation, patience, and instinct could outperform bravado and bets. As the other Marines returned to their drills, some glancing at her with newfound respect, Maya took a moment for herself. She checked her rifle once more, methodically cleaning and inspecting it as she always did. The act was habitual, part of the discipline that had brought her to this point. There was no celebration, no fanfare, only the quiet acknowledgement of a job executed flawlessly. Yet even in her calm, Maya could sense the shift. The Marines who had doubted her were no longer dismissive. They observed her differently now, some with cautious admiration, others with reluctant respect. Even Jensen seemed changed, his earlier arrogance replaced by a tentative humility. Maya had not only proven her skill but had also altered the perceptions of everyone present. Rivera approached, eyes focused on her steady hands. "You've set a new standard today," he said quietly. "Not just for marksmanship but for discipline, focus, and execution. That's the kind of example Marines are supposed to follow." Maya's expression remained neutral, but inside, a quiet satisfaction swelled. This was validation, yes, but not the kind she sought outwardly. It was confirmation that years of training, of relentless discipline, of honoring her father's teachings, had borne fruit in the most undeniable way possible. The range began to clear as drills continued elsewhere, but the story of Maya's 5 shots remained. Recruits and seasoned Marines alike would recount the moment in hushed, almost reverential tones. She had taken a casual bet, the kind tossed around thoughtlessly in the shadows of the range, and had turned it into an undeniable testament to skill, preparation, and calm precision under pressure. Later, as she walked back to her quarters, Maya felt the familiar mix of focus and quiet confidence that had carried her through every challenge. She didn't need to gloat, didn't need to seek praise. Her performance had spoken for itself, and the lesson she left behind was clear. Underestimating someone based on appearance, gender, or quiet demeanor was a dangerous mistake. Skill, discipline, and preparation spoke louder than assumptions ever could. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, the whispers of her legend continued to ripple through the base. Marines discussed the feat in mess halls, on the training grounds, and in barracks, the story growing slightly with each retelling, though the facts themselves were impossible to exaggerate. 5 shots. 5 perfect hits. In a heartbeat, she had transformed from the quiet, underestimated recruit into a figure of awe and respect. Maya, alone in the quiet of her room, allowed herself a small smile. She wasn't thinking about the bets, the astonishment, or even the admiration. She was thinking of her father, the lessons he had imparted, and the quiet pride she felt in honoring them through her actions. The day had been more than a demonstration of marksmanship. It had been a testament to years of discipline, focus, and the relentless pursuit of mastery. And while the base would remember the story for years to come, Maya Collins knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The calm, precision, and unwavering skill that had carried her through those 5 shots would define every challenge she faced moving forward. The legend of the quiet sergeant who had shattered a bet with 5 perfect headshots had begun. And with it, Maya's reputation as a Marine whose discipline, focus, and skill could not be underestimated was firmly cemented. Weeks had passed since the legendary five-shot display on the range. The story of Sergeant Maya Collins spread through Camp Pendleton like wildfire, whispered in mess halls, barracks, and training grounds. Her peers, once skeptical and dismissive, now regarded her with cautious respect. Even the instructors who had seen countless recruits rise and fall acknowledged that Maya was exceptional, not just in marksmanship, but in composure, discipline, and presence under pressure. It was during a joint field exercise that her reputation would evolve from impressive to indispensable. The mission was a simulated urban combat scenario, designed to test situational awareness, decision-making, and teamwork under high stress. Squads maneuvered through mock buildings, streets, and obstacles, each Marine expected to follow orders and coordinate with precision. Maya's squad had been assigned Overwatch, providing sniper support from a high vantage point overlooking the compound. The simulation started like any other, with tension building gradually. The younger Marines fumbled, calling out coordinates and reporting movements, their voices tinged with anxiety. Jensen, now humbled by Maya's previous performance, worked diligently beside her, though he still couldn't shake a faint sense of awe. Rivera watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the unfolding operation. Then the scenario escalated. A miscommunication between teams led to a simulated threat appearing dangerously close to friendly forces. Shouts echoed across the field as Marines scrambled to identify targets. Panic, even simulated, rippled through the squad. In those critical seconds, hesitation could have led to catastrophic results. Maya remained calm. Her training, honed through years of discipline and precision, allowed her to observe the chaos without losing clarity. She adjusted her scope, identifying the simulated threat with exacting accuracy, and relayed precise instructions to her squad. Her voice was calm but authoritative, cutting through the rising tension. "Hold your fire. Target at 400 meters southeast corner. Confirm visual. Adjust 3 clicks for wind. Wait for my signal," she instructed, her tone carrying the quiet confidence that had become her signature. Her team followed, every movement synchronized with her commands. The scenario could have devolved into disaster, but Maya's presence transformed it into a demonstration of control and mastery under pressure. The simulated target advanced dangerously close to a friendly team. Most Marines would have hesitated, uncertain in the chaos, but Maya's instincts were flawless. She squeezed the trigger, hitting the target precisely, neutralizing the threat before it could compromise the exercise. The squad moved with renewed confidence, inspired by her composure. Every Marine present now recognized that the quiet sergeant was more than skill with a rifle. She was a stabilizing force in any high-pressure situation. Jensen, standing beside her, couldn't hide his admiration. I don't know how you do it," he admitted, voice low. Maya simply nodded, eyes still scanning the environment. She didn't need to explain. Her actions spoke louder than any words. The simulation continued, and she guided her team flawlessly through the remainder of the exercise, her calm focus ensuring efficiency, accuracy, and safety at every step. Rivera observed silently, noting how Maya had not only executed her own precision but elevated the performance of her entire squad. "This is leadership," he muttered to himself. "Not through words but through example." Her presence commanded trust, and her actions had transformed doubt into confidence. The younger Marines, once wary and skeptical, now looked to her for guidance, instinctively understanding that in moments of chaos, following her lead meant survival and success. The field exercise concluded, and the debriefing was filled with praise. Not the empty flattery of casual observers, but genuine recognition from instructors and peers alike. Sergeant Collins' decision-making and composure saved this squad from a simulated disaster, Rivera stated bluntly. "Her precision and leadership under pressure set a standard for all of you. Learn from it." Even Jensen, previously dismissive, stepped forward. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted, tone tinged with humility. Maya gave him a simple nod, not gloating, not boasting. Her actions had proven the point. Respect, earned quietly and definitively, needed no further embellishment. Over the following weeks, Maya's influence spread throughout the base. Recruits sought her advice on marksmanship and strategy. Experienced Marines approached her for guidance during training exercises. She remained modest, teaching through demonstration rather than words, letting her skill and composure shape those around her. Her presence became a stabilizing force, a reminder that true ability is measured by performance under pressure, not by appearance or bravado. During one particularly challenging training exercise, Maya's calm focus once again prevented a near catastrophe. A miscommunication between squads led to a simulated friendly fire scenario. Panic rippled through the field, voices overlapping, commands conflicting. Without hesitation, Maya assessed the situation, relaying precise instructions to both teams. Her observations and adjustments corrected the trajectory of the simulation, neutralizing the potential disaster. The exercise ended with every squad intact and operational, a testament to her skill and quick thinking. By the end of the month, Maya's legend was firmly established. She wasn't just the sergeant who had made 5 perfect headshots on the range. She was a symbol of calm, disciplined expertise under pressure. Her influence extended beyond marksmanship to decision-making, strategy, and leadership. The Marines who had doubted her now understood that true skill is earned, honed, and revealed when it matters most. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, Maya reflected quietly. She didn't dwell on praise or accolades. Instead, she considered the responsibility that came with her skill, the ability to protect, guide, and elevate those around her. Every shot, every instruction, every decision carried weight. And in those moments, she realized the true value of her discipline. It wasn't just about hitting a target, but about saving lives and ensuring the success of the team. The younger Marines, watching from a distance, now whispered her name with reverence. "Collins, she's unreal," one said. "I want to be like her someday," another added. The story of her 5 shots had been just the beginning. Her actions during real-world exercises had transformed her from a legend of the range into a living example of precision, discipline, and leadership. Maya remained humble, always returning to the fundamentals that had brought her this far: focus, patience, preparation, and respect for her craft. She trained diligently, refined her skills, and guided those around her with quiet authority. The base had learned a lesson in underestimation, and Maya had shown that true mastery is not about recognition, but about the lives saved, the lessons imparted, and the trust earned through consistent excellence. And as the night settled over Camp Pendleton, the story of Sergeant Maya Collins, the quiet Marine who had turned 5 headshots into a legend, continued to grow. Her calm, precise, and deadly skill had become more than a story, it had become a standard. A reminder that preparation and discipline are the ultimate weapons, and that the quietest among them often carry the greatest force. By the following month, the story of Sergeant Maya Collins had spread beyond her squad, beyond the range, and across the entire base. Camp Pendleton buzzed with whispers of the quiet Marine who had turned a casual bet into a display of flawless skill, 5 headshots in mere seconds. What had begun as a tale of precision had evolved into something much larger, a symbol of discipline, focus, and unshakable confidence. Maya's daily life continued much as before. She arrived at dawn, checked her rifle meticulously, and ran drills with the same meticulous attention to detail. But the subtle shift around her was unmistakable. Recruits and seasoned Marines alike treated her with newfound respect, seeking her guidance and studying her movements with curiosity and admiration. Her presence on the range or in the field no longer just commanded attention, it commanded trust. It was during an advanced combat training exercise that her influence became undeniable. The mission simulated a hostile urban environment, with multiple squads maneuvering through narrow streets, alleyways, and crumbling buildings. Chaos, confusion, and high stakes were built into every scenario. For many Marines, even seasoned ones, the exercise proved overwhelming. Orders clashed, communication broke down and tension escalated to near panic. But not for Maya. Positioned atop a crumbling building overlooking the exercise, Maya assumed her role as Overwatch sniper. Her eyes scanned the terrain, absorbing every detail: movement, shadows, angles, even the way the sun reflected off windows. She could anticipate threats before they fully emerged, a gift of focus honed over years of preparation. Every calculation she had made in the past on the range, in simulations, and in high-pressure scenarios converged into a single moment of clarity. Her squad moved beneath her, coordinating as best they could, but uncertainty lingered. The young Marines glanced up nervously, seeking her guidance. Jensen, now a transformed Marine in humility and admiration, followed her lead, relaying instructions and trusting her judgment. When a simulated threat emerged, an enemy advancing through a narrow corridor toward an exposed squad, Maya's voice cut through the chaos, calm yet commanding. "Hold your position. Target moving past the southeast corner 350 meters. Adjust for wind and distance. Fire on my mark," she instructed. Her orders were precise, concise, and unquestionable. The squad followed her guidance flawlessly. The target was neutralized before any simulated damage could occur, and the exercise continued smoothly, thanks to her presence. Rivera observed from a distance, arms crossed, a small nod of approval hidden behind his stoic demeanor. "That's the kind of leader every Marine needs," he muttered quietly. "Not the loudest voice, but the one who gets it right when it counts." Word of Maya's performance in the training exercise spread quickly, this time beyond the base. Other squads began asking to train with her. Instructors recommended her for leadership exercises, and her peers sought her advice not only in marksmanship, but in strategy, patience, and composure under pressure. Maya had become a teacher by example, her calm, calculated actions shaping the performance of everyone around her. One evening during a briefing, a young recruit approached her, eyes wide with respect. "Sergeant Collins, I've heard the story," he said quietly. 5 shots, 5 perfect hits. But how do you stay so calm under pressure?" Maya regarded him for a moment, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "Discipline," she replied simply. "Focus, preparation. You don't wait for the moment to be perfect. You prepare so that when it comes, your skill is ready." Her words were few, but the meaning was clear. Actions, not words, were the true measure of mastery. The recruit nodded, inspired, and left with a new understanding of what it meant to follow someone capable, calm, and precise. Meanwhile, Jensen and other Marines who had once doubted her continued to adjust their perspectives. Jensen, in particular, now found himself quietly modeling his approach after Maya. Where he had once relied on arrogance and bravado, he began to appreciate patience, observation, and preparation. Watching her work, following her guidance, and seeing her skill in action transformed his understanding of leadership and effectiveness. Maya's influence extended further during joint exercises with other units. She became a point of reference, not because she demanded attention, but because her actions demanded recognition. The other Marines learned quickly that underestimating her was a mistake they could not afford. When she gave a command, others followed without question, knowing that her precision and judgment could mean the difference between success and failure. It wasn't just her sharpshooting that earned respect. It was the way she carried herself in every situation. Calm, observant, and deliberate, she became the person others instinctively relied upon in moments of uncertainty. Her quiet confidence inspired her peers, transforming doubt into trust and hesitation into decisive action. Maya Collins had become more than a legend on the range. She had become a symbol of excellence, a benchmark for every Marine aspiring to mastery. One afternoon, during a routine training exercise, a simulated emergency created chaos across the field. Recruits panicked, orders clashed, and confusion threatened to disrupt the mission entirely. Maya moved seamlessly through the exercise, guiding, directing, and executing with precision. Every step, every decision, every shot reinforced her reputation as a Marine whose skill and composure were unmatched. By the end of the exercise, the senior instructors called the squad together. Rivera addressed them directly. "Today demonstrated something critical," he said, voice carrying weight and authority. "Skill, discipline, and focus can't be taught through words alone. They are earned through action, practice, and commitment. Sergeant Collins has shown all of you what that looks like. Learn from it, follow it, strive for it." The message was clear. Maya Collins was no longer just a sharpshooter. She was a mentor, a leader, and a living example of excellence under pressure. Her legend had moved beyond individual feats to encompass influence, guidance, and inspiration. The 5 shots on the range were just the beginning. Her consistent performance and composure had cemented her place as a Marine to be respected, followed, and emulated. That night, as the sun set across Camp Pendleton, casting long shadows over the training fields, Maya reflected quietly on her journey. She wasn't seeking fame or recognition, but she understood the impact her actions had on those around her. Every Marine inspired, every recruit guided, every squad stabilized. These were the true measures of her skill. Her father's lessons, her discipline, and her years of preparation had not only made her a deadly marksman, but a leader capable of shaping the effectiveness and confidence of everyone in her presence. And as the stories of her 5 perfect shots continued to spread, now enhanced by her consistent demonstrations of leadership and composure, Maya's reputation became more than legend. It became a standard, a benchmark, a quiet reminder to all Marines that preparation, discipline, and focus could accomplish what bravado and doubt could never achieve. Sergeant Maya Collins, once underestimated, now stood as a symbol not of arrogance, but of precision, patience, and unwavering excellence. The sun rose over Camp Pendleton, golden rays spilling across the barracks and training fields. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the familiar scent of gunpowder and earth. For Sergeant Maya Collins, it was just another day of drills, exercises, and preparation, but the atmosphere around her had changed entirely. Where once whispers of doubt and casual bets had filled the air, now there was quiet reverence. Marines glanced at her with respect, younger recruits followed her example, and instructors nodded in acknowledgement of the quiet authority she commanded. It was during a combined exercise, one designed to test every Marine's skill, precision, and teamwork, that Maya's legacy would be fully recognized. Multiple squads maneuvered through a complex simulated urban environment. Explosions boomed in the distance, smoke drifted through alleyways, and the sounds of simulated combat echoed across the training grounds. Chaos, confusion, and high-pressure decision-making tested every Marine present. Maya assumed her post in an elevated overwatch position, overlooking the sprawling battlefield. Her rifle rested comfortably in her hands, eyes scanning for movement, analyzing trajectories and anticipating threats. Her mind, trained to calculate distance, wind, and trajectory in an instant, processed the environment with precision. Every detail mattered: the position of every Marine, the simulated positions of the enemy, and even the subtle shifts of sunlight on the walls. A sudden simulated threat emerged. A squad had been compromised by poor communication, and the enemy was closing in on exposed positions. Panic rippled across the field as young Marines faltered, uncertain of their next move. Jensen, standing nearby, glanced up at Maya. He had seen her in action before, but even he felt the tension spike. Maya's voice cut through the chaos, calm yet commanding. "Hold your positions. Target moving along the southeast corridor. Adjust for wind. Fire on my mark." Every syllable carried authority, every instruction precise. The squad obeyed instinctively, trusting her judgment without question. Her first shot rang out, hitting the target dead center. The second followed in perfect sequence, each bullet striking with accuracy that seemed almost impossible under pressure. The squad began moving with newfound confidence, inspired by her calm demeanor and flawless execution. Every action she took stabilized the situation, transforming panic into organized efficiency. As the exercise unfolded, Maya continued to guide her team, neutralizing simulated threats while keeping her squad safe. Her decisions were calculated, precise, and deliberate, a perfect balance of skill and instinct. Instructors and senior Marines watched in awe, noting how her presence elevated the performance of everyone around her. By the end of the exercise, the results were undeniable. Not a single squad member had been lost in the simulation, and every objective had been completed with precision. The senior instructor, standing on the observation platform, addressed the assembled Marines. "Today demonstrated more than skill with a rifle," he said, his voice carrying over the field. "It demonstrated leadership, composure, and the ability to inspire those around you. Sergeant Maya Collins has set a standard not just for marksmanship, but for every Marine present here. Learn from it, follow it, strive for it." The Marines erupted in applause, not for theatrics but for undeniable excellence. Jensen, standing beside Maya, finally allowed a smile of genuine respect. "I get it now," he said quietly. "You're incredible." Maya offered a simple nod, letting her actions speak for themselves. Recognition was not her goal, but acknowledgement of her skill had finally arrived. Later, during a formal briefing, Maya was officially commended for her exceptional performance. Rivera presented her with a certificate of recognition for marksmanship, leadership, and composure under pressure. The words on the certificate reflected what every Marine had witnessed firsthand. Her skill was unmatched, her discipline unwavering, and her ability to guide and inspire unparalleled. Yet even with the recognition, Maya remained humble. She spoke briefly, addressing her squad and peers. "Discipline, preparation, and focus, that's what makes a Marine effective. No one succeeds alone. We rely on each other, trust each other, and learn from each other. That's what today proved." Her words were simple, but the sincerity and weight behind them resonated deeply. Every Marine present understood the truth in her statement. The legend of Maya Collins, the quiet sergeant who had turned a casual bet into 5 perfect headshots, had reached its apex. But more than that, it had evolved into something greater, a story of leadership, discipline, and the embodiment of Marine values. Her peers no longer just respected her skill. They trusted her, followed her example, and aspired to emulate the calm precision she displayed in every situation. Even months later, recruits and Marines would recount her story, embellishing none of it because embellishment was unnecessary. 5 shots, 5 perfect hits, unshakable composure, calm under pressure, and above all, a Marine whose actions inspired everyone around her to be better, to focus harder, and to achieve more. Maya returned to the range frequently, maintaining her skills, training new Marines, and refining her technique. She led by example, demonstrating that mastery required constant effort, attention to detail, and unwavering discipline. Her quiet presence became a stabilizing force on the base, a reminder that greatness is not about showmanship, but about consistent excellence under pressure. One evening, as she walked across the base toward her quarters, Jensen approached her. "Sergeant," he began, hesitating slightly, I want to say thanks for everything, for showing me what it means to be a Marine, to focus, to lead." Maya glanced at him, expression calm, eyes sharp. "Just remember," she said quietly, "it's not about me. It's about what we do together, about being ready when it counts. That's how you make a difference." Jensen nodded, understanding fully the depth of her words. The sun set, painting the horizon in gold and crimson, casting long shadows across the training fields. Marines continued their drills, each movement echoing the lessons Maya had quietly imparted through example. Her story, the 5 shots, the calm precision, the leadership under pressure, had become more than legend. It had become a standard, a benchmark for every Marine who aspired to excellence. And as night fell over Camp Pendleton, Sergeant Maya Collins, once underestimated and overlooked, remained quietly vigilant, her rifle by her side, her mind sharp and her focus unwavering. The base had learned a valuable lesson. True skill, discipline, and leadership are revealed not through arrogance or spectacle, but through quiet, consistent mastery and the ability to inspire everyone around you. The legend of the quiet Marine who had defied expectations, Shattered bets and redefined precision had been cemented, and every Marine who followed her example carried a piece of that legacy forward, disciplined, focused, and inspired by Sergeant Maya Collins, the sharpshooter who proved that preparation and calm under pressure were the ultimate weapons.